the 11th edition of the risk report, which is based on a perception survey of over 750 experts and people in our wide network, is highlighting a series of risks, that risks are increasingly interconnected and they're increasingly imminent. So the risk perspective is 10 years, but risks that we've been seeing emerging are now perceived to be more here, more imminent, more real-time, more tangible in this moment. More of the fundamental risks that people are worried about are concentrating in the upper right quadrant, meaning high likelihood, high impact.
At the center of this web of interconnectedness is the growing social instability. I mean, perhaps the most potent symbol of the social instability is the refugee crisis and the million arrivals into Europe. That million is really only part of the overall issue of involuntary migration, where the total displaced people now number 60 million, which, to put in context, compares to 40 million at the end of World War II. Social unrest, while itself is a threat, also connects to other threats that ultimately have different kinds of impact in the economic sphere and the business sphere. That obviously is creating political tensions and frictions between European countries in trying to grapple with this problem, different perceptions of how to grapple with it. That in itself could lead to policy changes which make connections within the European environment more challenging. Could be trading relationships, could be labor migration, other things that make it more difficult for businesses to operate, which could then create a drag on economic activity, which then could lead to further unemployment and go back and feed into more social instability. Final risk I wanted to talk about a bit was just cyber. This was one in the survey that had a significant disparity in terms of its geographic representation. This is a boundaryless risk. It's not going away. It has the feel of kind of a continuing arms race kind of risk in terms of the security versus the hackers. And it's one that is going to spread. I mean, we see this disparity from Marsh in the perspective of where insurance is being purchased today. 90% of the cyber insurance is bought in the U.S. environment, but 90% of the risk is clearly not in the U.S. It's clearly a much broader issue than that. So I think this risk needs more attention, in many markets, and I think it's going to be with us for many years.
One of the key insights from the Global Risk Report is this negative feedback loop that exists between geopolitical risk or political risks and climate change. There are more geopolitical tensions that exist today since the end of the Cold War. We're seeing interstate conflicts, failure of states, dangerous non-state actors like IS emerging and flourishing from these tensions, and actually the failure of national governance. So political risk is a big topic for multinational companies like Zurich. And some organizations are improving the way they assess and the importance they put on political risk. But quite frankly, a lot more needs to be done. The failure of national governance is seen as the highest risk to doing business, most especially in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, in Sub-Saharan and North Africa, as well as in Asia. So political violence and forced abandonment of operations are one of the largest sources of losses for multinational companies. The more political conflicts there are, the more difficult it is to meet the challenge of finding globally coordinated solutions to resolve climate change and therefore mitigate climate risks. The impact of climate change through food crisis, through withdrawal of clean water, exacerbates the geopolitical risks and the security landscape, hence that negative feedback loop. Failure to mitigate and adapt to climate change is the most impactful risk that we're seeing today. 3 out of the top 5 risks are environmental. Extreme weather events, climate change, natural catastrophes. Climate change is rated as #1 trend in 2016 that would shape global development. And so far, mitigation efforts for climate change is not having any kind of discernible positive impact. COP21 in Paris in December is certainly a major step in the right direction, but more needs to be done. We have to adapt. We already have to take actions today to adapt to the impact of climate change. And that is the call for resilience, specifically for multinational companies like Zurich. The consequences of climate change pose a huge challenge, whether it's the cooling of our production warehouses, production sites, natural catastrophes and how they disrupt our operations, damage to infrastructure, increasing price volatility in commodities, and extreme climate events also drive these risks in the way in how we operate globally.
For more on the 2016 Global Risk Report, visit the World Economic Forum website.